What is up, YouTube? Johnny B here again today, and we are bringing you a video of the IS350. And guess what? The first problem has occurred. The car left us stranded. Obviously, it was kind of out of nowhere because the alternator actually went out and it started draining the battery. It got a little bit of a battery light, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. Went to go check everything. Everything seemed fine. The battery is only a year old, so it's not like it's the battery. Normally batteries go out like 2-3 years, maybe even 4 years. So it just killed itself, and when it kills itself, you know that it's the alternator, because even if your battery was bad, the alternator would keep the car running no matter what. So the alternator went out. We are at 107,000 miles. It's probably the original alternator, so it's about that time, you know, when something like that starts to fail. So we're gonna be swapping it out, showing you guys how to swap it out in case this happens to you guys. You guys know how to do this yourself, DIY style. And I got the alternator from Pep Boys. It's like 135 bucks. I needed it today because it's my daily driver, and without my daily, I can't really get anywhere unless I take out the FRS. We're gonna go ahead and swap this out. So let's get to it. So, in case you guys are wondering where the alternator is, it's right in this region of the engine, so right where you put the oil. Underneath it, you can see the AC compressor, and then we have the alternator right here. And to remove it, we're gonna need to remove 3 bolts. There's one right there. You can kind of barely see it right there. And then we have one last bolt that's kind of hidden under this pulley. If you look at your alternator that you're gonna be installing, it looks like this. So just to give you an idea where the bolts are at, and then that bolt right there is gonna be the one we're gonna be needing to remove. Obviously, we're gonna be replacing it as well, and that one is right here. So if you follow this cable, see that little cap right there? That's where the power, you know, gets connected, and that's the bolt we're gonna need to remove. And then there's one connection as well. If you follow this, it's like hidden right in the middle. You can barely see the wire right there. That's where the connection is at. So that's what we're gonna need to remove, so then we can go ahead and pull the alternator out. So I was looking online, and a lot of the people say to remove this, but some people say you don't have to remove this. As long as you remove this little cover right here, you can get away with it. So we'll probably do that. Just remove that little cover, pull that out. That way we don't have to refill our cooling system. Make it a lot easier. So the first thing I went ahead and did was remove a 10mm bolt that's holding on this wire right here, which is the main power wire. And then I also went ahead and removed this connector right here from that bolt. Zoom into that from there, and then we can now try to remove the little cap that's right there. It's a little bit tight in there, so it's going to be a bit hard, but you can see it here. We're going to try to remove that cap right here so we can get to that 10mm bolt, remove that, and then the plug is right underneath it. So one thing you want to note is that before we remove the alternator, since it's got direct power going to it, we're going to go ahead and disconnect the battery, so that way we're not jumping any currents over there. There you go, loosen it up. And now we can go ahead and wiggle it off so that everything is disconnected. So after removing the cover, you can see right there exactly where I removed the 10mm bolt. And then now we can go ahead and just pull it out. There we go. So now this cable is fully disconnected. You see there? And my glove ripped. So that's how you can tell my hands were in a very tight space. Now we just disconnect the connector next. So now that I got the connector out, you can see exactly how to remove it. It's that little clip on the side. So literally all I did was come in through this side, and the clip is on this side of the alternator. On the back side of the alternator, I just pushed it and kind of pulled it at the same time, and the connector popped right out. Before we remove the main bolts, we're gonna want to go ahead and remove the belt. So we have the tensioner right there. We're gonna hook up to it, loosen the belt just to get it off the alternator. So all I did was put a 14mm wrench on there. I pulled the wrench upwards so that the pulley went up, and then it loosened up, and then we were able to pull the belt right off of the alternator. So that way I'm gonna leave all that there, so when I get the alternator back in, I can just pull that on that wrench again and just slip the belt right over the alternator. So now that we got all that loosened up, we're gonna go ahead and remove this little plastic cover, and mainly this stud right here. You can see it looks like an E-socket. I think it's like an E6, but I don't have one right now, so I'm going to be using a 4mm 6 point. Just put right on there. There we go. And then I can go ahead and remove it. They have like little plastic covers on them that you can just twist off. That way we can get the alternator out, because that's going to be one of the crucial pieces that are going to be in the way. That's how you remove these. You just twist them off with your fingers. And then here is another one. I believe there should only be 3. So this is the third one. And this piece should come off. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove this plastic clip from the plastics. That way we can get this wire out of the way. So I pulled the bottom one out first, and now I'm twisting it because it's gonna be stuck under this. Getting it out of that stud. And just moving it out of the way. There we go. Got this out. Move that out of the way. Now we have a little bit more clearance. And then one last thing that I'm noticing is this pulley is kind of in the way of the alternator. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove it. It's just a 14mm bolt. It's really easy. You just loosen it and it comes right off. So loosened up the bolt, and here comes the pulley. So really easy to remove. That gives us a lot more clearance for the alternator. So now we should be able to pop it out. So the alternator wasn't budging, and you guys are probably having the same exact issue as me. And that's because the design is really weird. Instead of just being 2 bolts holding it, there's also like a little bracket back here behind the alternator that's holding it in place. See that bolt right there? So it's right above this like straight line piece of aluminum. That bolt right there is holding on to this bracket that I'm like lighting up. Let me go ahead and grab the bolt. And that's what's stopping the alternator from coming out, because there's one last bolt wooden bracket. And there's actually a bolt that's like, you take a left right there, but this one seems to be a lot easier to grab. So hold it up. This one is a 12mm bolt. So that's what you guys are gonna need. I just used a regular wrench and socket with a short extension, and got to loosen it up, and then I just used the magnet to pull it out, as you guys saw. Now the alternator should be completely loose, and since we already removed all the stuff in front, we can go ahead and pull it out now. So now that I was trying to remove the alternator bracket, you can see how the last side of the alternator is touching right there, and it clears, but having the bracket on it does not clear because it starts hitting right here. As you can see, there's some scratches. So I had to go ahead and stick the wrench in there again, and knowing where it was at, I just went ahead and kind of guessed where it was at, put the 12mm socket on there and loosened it up, and then the rest just by finger. You know, it got loose enough to where I could just remove it with my fingers and then pop the bracket out. Obviously it's a very tight fit in there, and I was kind of doing it blind, but we got it out. So I guess we do need to remove the bracket just to be able to pull the alternator out. This is probably a little bit more difficult job than expected, mainly because it's a V6. Used to working on more 4-cylinder cars, and having a V6 just makes everything a lot tighter to fit inside the engine bay. But looks like we got it all loose now. So let's see if now, there we go. Now it passed the threshold it was stuck on because of the bracket. And now I gotta go ahead and try to fish this out somehow. So I'm gonna be using both hands to fish it out. So I got to this point. Looks like I can remove it without having to remove that piece. Looks like we have There we go. And it's up. Oh, this thing's heavy. Alternator is now out. And we can go ahead and do that whole process again to put the new one in. Great. Got it all wiggled in there and it's in. Now we just gotta go ahead and put the little bracket that goes behind there. So I'm gonna put that little bracket on back there, start lining everything up, and then bolting it down, and then we can go ahead and connect everything back and put everything back in its place. And then hopefully the battery light will not be on any longer. So before putting in the alternator all the way in, I had to go ahead and put that little bracket back on first, tighten it, and then finally wiggle it into its place with the bracket on. So if we look down here, let me show you guys. So the bracket is on, and now we have to get the bolt there somehow without dropping it into the abyss down there. You can either grab some tape or just like a piece of paper or something and jam the nut onto your socket. That way, in case it almost decides to fall, it won't, because it's going to be stuck on the socket. So that's just like a little pro tip to make sure that you don't lose the bolt. So now let's try to see how we can get this back on there. So just this bracket back here with this bolt is making this job 10 times more difficult because of this. I'm having a hard time because most of the stuff you're doing it blind, trying to get it on there. But it's definitely doable if you have, you know, enough experience, enough practice. And if it's your first time, just take your time. We got the bolt on, and now for reference, I'm going to show you guys what I'm using. I'm using a 3/8 ratchet with a little extension, and then this is a 12 millimeter long extension, just to give me like the perfect distance. That way I can still ratchet even though the header is right there. And obviously you're gonna need a little light. I'm using my little magnet light to kind of light it up in there for me so I can see. So now we're gonna have to go ahead and do the rest of it blind because we have to fit this in there. But luckily there's some guidance that you can use to put it on. So let's go ahead and tighten that down, and then we can tighten the rest of the alternator down and start putting all the connections and everything back. So got the alternator bolted up. Those two bolts here are nice and tight. So are the two on the back, which is the ones that are on the bracket. It's actually a bolt and a nut. And then I went ahead and hooked up the wire to it, to that 10 mil. Use the same trick so that the nut doesn't fall out. I went ahead and did the connection as well, and did that 10 millimeter bolt that's holding the harness. Now we can go ahead and put the pulley on, the belt, and then the little plastic cover right there, and then we will be done. Got the belt and pulley back on, got the stud back on. So now we're gonna go ahead and put the little clips that go there to hold that plastic piece, and then we should be done with alternator install. Obviously we're gonna put all our covers back. Those had to be removed just to get a little bit better access, but let's go ahead and finish that up. Got everything put back together, so now let's go ahead and turn the car on and test it and make sure that the battery light isn't on and the alternator is good. So turned on the car, and now we don't have the battery light. It's usually above the low tire indication light. So we got everything fixed now. It's awesome. There are now 0 lights on the dash. The lights that I had for the low tire pressure, we just went ahead and reset it with my friend. He has one of those $15,000 computers. Just connected it, checked everything, made sure that everything was good. I was missing a fuse for the ABS. That got solved, so I guess that fuse, if it gets removed, you can essentially disable traction control on ABS. And then you can just put the fuse back and the lights turn off like that. So that's pretty cool. So I thought that it was the battery going out, but it was just the fuse that blew out because of it. And then everything is good now. So the car is running perfect. There are 0 issues with it, 0 lights on. The car drives amazing. And now I'm just gonna go ahead and keep enjoying it as my daily until a customer comes and decides they like this car and they want it. So I might just sell it and get myself another Lexus, most likely. As you guys know, I love driving Lexus for my dailies. Maybe another IS300, who knows? I can't seem to get away from these cars, so I am hoping to get a newer one, but those are a little bit out of my price range at the moment, so maybe later on. when I can buy one cash. Obviously, I don't want to be paying payments. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope this video worked out perfect for you guys, and so you guys can install your own alternator and not have to pay $900 at the dealership if you want to buy the alternator from them and get it installed by them. But you know, save myself a lot of money. It was only 135 bucks, did it myself, and now the car should be good. And hopefully, you know, we won't have any more issues. But if I do have more issues, I will keep you guys updated with any other issues that arise from this car. Other than that, you know, it's pretty basic for the alternator to go out at above 100,000 miles. So nothing too out of the ordinary. So as always, you guys have a great day.